What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Champions Corner here on TCG University. I am joined by
Kevin Broberg.
Kevin Broberg. Kevin Broberg, the man who I gotta say, I would not be the player I am today if it weren't for you. Which we will get into eventually. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. So first and foremost, how are you, buddy?
Doing
How's it
good.
going?
It's pretty good. I just posted another retro card of the day, a series I'm trying to get started on the Universes subreddit to
Yes.
try to drum up some activity over there.
And you can just find that at r/universes.
Yeah, Universes with the
Perfect.
US, Reddit.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just jump into this interview. I feel like this one's going to be a bit of a long one, just because of
Oh man.
the rap sheet. So my first question is, Kevin, who are you? For the good people at home who've never heard Kevin,
man.
Rochester's finest, Broberg. Dang.
This is me. So yeah, I play a lot of UFS. I've been playing, I don't know, for over 10 years at this point, I guess. Jeez, it's like oh man, I wasn't ready for an elevator pitch. Crap. Yeah, I play a lot of decks. I build a lot of decks. Game's really fun. I'm a software engineer by trade, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's turning into like a.
It
I like
could be a
brewing
job
decks.
interview.
I
It
like
could
brewing
be.
decks. I like building kind of unique decks and following where the cards are taking me. I feel like
Okay.
it's kind of my thing. And yeah, I used to win a lot, and especially looking at my rap sheet, like I won a lot like 2 years ago, and then Cowboy Bebop happened, and I didn't win a lot after that.
Huh? That's interesting. That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
Um, I think it's a couple things. I think I didn't travel quite as like I traveled a whole lot like in 2016 and 2017.
Like a ton.
And then I also had a ton of success those years. And then I think still travel. I still travel, frequently, but
Mhm.
not quite to the same magnitude. I think. I feel like honestly, like I think the biggest thing is that other people are outworking me. I think I'm not necessarily. Well, I feel like kind of like the metagame has shifted to a point where like you can play a quote unquote fun deck, or you can play a deck where you're seeking to maximize your chances of winning, and the latter kind of deck will kind of inflict a lot of misery on your opponent in
For
a lot of
sure.
cases.
For sure.
And I don't want to necessarily inflict misery on the people who I'm playing the game with all the time.
Okay. All the time.
um,
All the time. Just
yeah,
sometimes.
not all the time. Like we go to weeklies. It's like, hey, we're gonna hang out with friends. It's like, do I want to take away your capacity to play the game? Not so much. So I'll play something. I'll play whatever in my bag. I'll build some cool funny deck. But then I feel like I don't necessarily buckle down and like really try to get people together to like really try to hammer it out as much as you kind of need to really stay sharp and stay on top of everything.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
and sometimes I find I like manage to to dig deep and find something like Zhangwan and just like craft that in my own basement. Kind of just figure out all the stuff I want to do with that, and then kind of leverage my raw calculation powers to be able to play that deck really well.
Don't worry, we'll get there for sure. For sure. So, was Universes your first card game, or did you start somewhere else?
So it's the first game that I've ever traveled for.
Okay.
I played like Pokemon League back when grade school.
Hell yeah.
I remember at some point I like, got a Japanese Moltres that was super cool. I didn't really even know what it did. I didn't really know how to like play that game
Do you know now?
strategically. At some point, someone I like picked up a magazine and it was like, yeah, play like Pokemon that have like high HP and like efficient moves, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll try that. And I built like a 5-color deck that was terrible.
Efficient.
Yeah, dude, like it's one energy that does like 40 damage. Holy shit, it's so good. But and then I played like I learned to play Magic. I played a little bit of Magic, then I stopped playing Magic. Then I played a little bit of Magic later, basically like buying starter decks and playing with my brother, and like occasionally buying. I was like super excited when I bought a Vizardrix for $1, and that's a 6U. It's 6U, so it's 7 mana and it's a 6/6 vanilla. And I was like, oh my god, dude, this card's so good. My deck's blue. I can cast this. This is gonna be great. It's gonna be a 6/6. It's so big. I was real bad. Um, but
So,
then I played a lot of Soul Calibur when that was in arcades, and that was like my next
Okay.
thing after we stopped playing Magic. So like, we'd go to the arcade and play Soul Calibur, and then that came out on home consoles. And for like that entire summer, I did like nothing but sit in my room and play Soul Calibur.
which Soul Calibur?
Yeah, Soul Calibur 2 for the
That
GameCube.
was the one that's the one that I
Link.
played.
And the campaign mode.
Yeah.
Like I played so much of that game. And then a couple years later, like my brother came home from college and he said, "Hey, look, check it out! There's this Soul Calibur card game." And I was like, "Holy crap, let's go!" He had a Tira deck, and it was overpowered as hell because this is 3 Dot Tira. This is the original promo.
Okay.
This is around when I want to say Blades of Fury had just come out, so like maybe like 2007, if memory serves.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah, way back in the day.
Yeah.
And then picked it up. I borrowed a deck from our local scout and got top 4 at our first tournament. And then it must have been Blades of Fury because I remember Yun Sung. Every interview with me was going to turn into like a little bit of Legacy Corner. I feel like
That's
is
fine.
intentional. So Yun
That's
Sung
what people
said,
want.
after you play a card, after you make a control check, you can commit your momentum to help pass the check.
That's very cool.
And also, there were cards like Hop, which says action card after your opponent plays a non-attack card, get 2 momentum. There was Power Up, which says get 2 momentum. And there was a foundation called Whereabouts Unknown that you sacrifice foundation to get 3 momentum.
That's a bunch. Could you imagine that in standard right now?
I prefer not to.
Yeah.
Let me play with Krita Yuga and have cards like Krita Yuga instead of stupid Whereabouts Unknown.
Yeah.
But I got butchered by that, but it was like cool. Like I lost to like this crazy meta deck that's doing all these insane, awesome, like busted things, and like I was just playing like throws and damage reducts. Like it was a good clean UFS, good old times. But then I was kind of hooked. I bought a box. Did I buy a box that night? Like I remember like saved up some allowance to buy a box or something or whatever. But I got some cards and then I built some decks and I remember for top 4 I got my choice of a character from the promo binder, and so like I looked at like promo Ukyo and a bunch of other crap and I was like, yeah, I'll play Sakura. This seems fun. Reversals. And playing a reversal character while being terrible at the game is a good way to be a little bit less terrible at the game, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
You are forced to kind of comprehend things, and then I mean all the cards were kind of busted back then, so it was like I'd take turns losing to different busted things and gradually develop some stuff. My first real like sort of competitive deck was actually playing with Whereabouts Unknown. Was 2 Dot Sophidia, which was a really, really busted old character. I feel like I almost like shouldn't even go into it because like it's so busted and so like pointless to talk about because it wasn't really even competitive in the grand scheme of things because like you played against a good deck and it kind of took away your ability to play the game in the same way.
Yeah.
And she was also a 6 hand size character and that was not really a great place to be. Just your consistency and everything wasn't all there.
Okay.
But it was funny. When things came together, it got to you discard your opponent's entire hand, and then they didn't get to have a new one, and then you got to do whatever you wanted to them. That was good times.
Yeah. When it works, it works, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of like I eventually stumbled onto that and like managed to get all that stuff together. And kind of my thing is always I feel like Ben is like, what cool stuff can I do?
For sure.
How can I do something? Like how can I put my cards together in a way that is greater than some of their parts? And even like if I've been a huge geek of like following Magic coverage, and that's kind of always the thing I like seeing there is like what crazy brews can people put together that are greater than some of the parts? And UFS is really, really a good home for that kind of experience. Did my screen just mute?
I've always thought that UFS is like the perfect deck building game. It truly is a way that you can express yourself. It's almost like art, really, because like every card is quote unquote useful. Every card does something and has a purpose. You can really find your 60 cards that actually like says something. That's really lame to say about a card game, but like it's like if you really dive deep and look at like what it is that you're wanting to do or say with your deck, like UFS is the game for it. Like the game I originally started with was Yu-Gi-Oh, and it was very much not that. It was, hey, here's 35 cards that you have to play, and here's 5 cards that you get to express yourself with. in UFS universes, it's probably the opposite. Here's the 5 cards you have to play, and then here's the rest that you don't.
Yeah, I think UFS, especially like the deck building component, like I hate to say like it's deeper than other games because I certainly know a lot more about UFS than I know about any other games.
We can be pretentious.
It
Nobody
like,
else is watching.
Well, yeah, I'm just like rubbing the back of the universe's community here, aren't I?
Yes, yes.
Like, it's got a really, really bottomless. I was gonna say skill ceiling. Like it's got an infinite skill ceiling. Like you can't ever reach the actual top of the mountain.
For sure.
You can't ever be perfect.
For sure.
And like you can't really do that in any other game either, because if you think about kind of the like how many ways there are, like just like how many opening hands are there, right? In a given deck, right? You're choosing 7 cards out of 60 cards, and like just if you've ever done combinatorics, like that's 7 factorial over 60 factorial. That's a preposterously huge number. And it's in every card game, right? It's that kind of stuff goes on. And then in UFS now you have like an extra, like it's just you have all these extra layers, and you see so many cards every turn. So it's really, really, you can never stop getting better, kind of.
So it looks on here that your first champion, since that's the name of the show, was the 2012 Canadian Teams champion. What was the journey like from, hey, I have this cool Tira deck, or my brother has this cool Tira deck, to 2012 Teams champion? Honestly, not a lot of people have done. I think I can count on one hand how many Canadian Teams champions there are.
That is one thing that I think is kind of unique about my career, is that I have retired more formats than anyone else in the history of most games don't have as many formats as I've retired.
Hell yeah.
There is not. I am still actually the reigning Team Canadian national champion. I'm the reigning Canadian national champion. I'm the reigning extended champion. I am second in line of the legacy champion, because there was a UK championship after that one. Yeah. Anyway, so
where's your belts? That's what we're asking. That's what we're saying. Where's the belts, Jasco?
I see. Oh my god. I really want to be. I really want to, like, Tim. I'm so jealous of Timmy 2 belts. I'll put it that way.
Everybody is.
Infinite jealousy.
Why would they be?
Because I choke at a lot of shit. Anyway, actually, so back in history, actually, I feel like, I was playing my brews, my nonsense. I was on a constrained budget for all this time, like way back in the day. I was in high school and whatever. But I had a collection. I got some cards each set that came out. I did a lot of trading and stuff. I had a deck that I keep together, and had enough cards to kind of play around some other stuff. Tim, I think you're probably not familiar with like any of the like 4 or 5 point kind of ancient history stuff, like before Jasco Games got the game, like back when Fantasy Flight was managing it.
I'm officially old.
Okay.
Old. I had my set that I pre-released rotate, which was the World of Endines.
Okay.
I'm part of the old man club now. But no, I don't remember 4 or 5 point.
The deck that I stumbled onto like a Fantasy Flight page, like someone like linked to, or I don't remember how this was, but I stumbled onto the first kind of competitive success I ever had. Kind of before I was a champion, I got second place at 2 kind of like semi-large, well, two larger events. The first one was a regional in Rochester.
Okay.
This was, I feel like, the first kind of big event we ever had in Rochester, and since I was in high school, I wasn't traveling. But sure. I put together a tri-symbol Nagase deck, all glued together with a bunch of Infinity stuff and a absolutely embarrassing absence of a win condition. But if you just played enough Wally stuff, you could win with a potato sandwich or a ham sandwich. And that was very much a ham sandwich, especially by... So the win condition is actually a 3 mid for 8, powerful 3. That was it.
I've heard powerful is your favorite keyword. Is that true?
That is true. That is true.
Can I ask why?
Powerful... Hell yeah, dude. This is way more interesting to the viewers, I think, than me reminiscing about Olkadan's mentoring. So what I love about Powerful is kind of it's really what I love about it is how kind of elegantly it like play like it just it's right in the orbit of like the core game mechanics of control checks and attacking and blocking. So with the Powerful keyword, if you you play an attack on turn 2, it's like let's say we're playing like pre Cowboy Bebop UFS. It's just 3 high for 4. It's a vanilla attack.
Yeah.
For 4 difficulty, 3 high for 4. Well, maybe your opponent's going to block, but maybe they're not, and they don't block because it's turn 2. They don't have the cards. They don't have the right block zone. Whatever. It's not worth blocking yet.
For sure.
But now I'm like, now you do that. You like footsie back and forth. You get a couple attacks. You have like 3 momentum, and your opponent's at like middling life total. And then if you play some more attacks, now your opponent's life total is getting low, so they have to start blocking. But if they block too much and you have a powerful finisher, you can take all that momentum you've built up from hitting them, and now it's going to one-hit KO them.
Okay.
And so now they're forced to go from like they start turn at 12, and you have a powerful 3 attack that you could be holding. Now if they take that 4 damage when they're at 12, now they're in danger zone of anything, so they kind of have to block that.
Yeah.
And then the powerful attack can finish them off. But if they don't block it, yeah, it's kind of
now forces a choice on them.
Yeah, it's kind of the push and pull, and like there's so many situations where if your opponent's getting low, you can start pressuring them with any random thing, and then just the fact you've built up that momentum from playing footsie with them earlier lets the powerful attack finish the game.
I love it. That's very cool. That's very cool. Anyways, back to 2012.
Yeah,
Canada.
back to 2012. Yeah, so I got second place in this. I got second place in this event. It was kind of cool because actually in the final round of Swiss, I got paired into another player who was playing a sort of architecturally similar deck. We were both sort of wall decks with kind of built around a lot of the same good symbol cards.
Okay.
And he absolutely murdered me because he had a bunch of expensive 1-checks in his deck. And I was playing my 3 mid for 8 powerful 3. And, he was playing cards that basically E-commit this attack is blocked. Can't beat that with a 3 mid for 8 powerful 3. But then I lost in the finals to actually Mike Lowe, who would go on to or had he just won Canadian Nationals playing Chun-Li with Feline Spike. But that was kind of my first taste, and I was like, okay, cool. I can build my weird stuff and kind of whatever, and I can actually compete. And then the game died, and then didn't play for a little while. But then it came back, and my friends told me, hey, we're going to Gen Con. And I looked at the cards, and I'd played with the Soul Calibur stuff. So this is the first Jasco Worlds, I believe. So it's first time at Gen Con. Red Horizon was out, I think.
We'll take your word for it.
But they had released the first. We had some more champ cards. So Mike Lowe's champion card was out. Okay. And I took a look at all the stuff, and I looked at Mike Lowe, and I looked at some of the cards from Tekken and Soul Calibur, and I had the idea that if I played a whole lot of kick attacks in my deck, I could have 2 foundations that basically had F commit draw 2 cards. Okay. And then I could play Mike Lowe, and I could play a foundation and untap my draw 2s, and then I could draw 2 more, and then I would build a staging area, and then I would pass turn with 7 cards in my hand, and they would all be attacks, and the next turn I would play 7 attacks, and they would die.
That sounds like a solid game plan.
And then I actually went undefeated in teams. I won 6 matches in teams. And my team, it was a 5 rounds plus top 8, and my team lost the other 2 matches in top 8. That was cool. And then in Swiss, I actually beat Keenan Meadows, who became the world champion, on the way to starting 3-0. And then I lost 3 in a row and missed top cuts.
And that was 2011 or 2012? I think that must have been 11.
Might have been 11.
If you want to see that story of when Keenan became champion, there's a Champions Corner with him out on the channel as well. There's the plug.
Yep, there you go. I'm sure Keenan can tell you all about that. He probably didn't talk about it because who cares about the match they lost on the weekend where they won 2 champ cards back to freaking back.
Yeah.
But that was cool. My deck matched up well against 7 hand-sized characters, even when their defense was as good as Ava's was. But then after that, that really kind of kindled the fire in me. And then I went to nationals that year and got second place. So first second place was Rochester Regional, losing to Mike Lowe, as it were. I lost to a bunch of now famous people. But then nationals was in Vegas at this time. So Gen Con was Worlds, Nationals was in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I went to the South Point Casino for the first time, went to Vegas for the first time, didn't do any Vegas stuff like hardly at all. I was just there for cards.
Oh yeah.
And I got second place playing my Slice Kicks deck, and I lost to Garrett Brett, who now is
respectable loss.
Yeah, now is considered a respectable loss, but at that time, he hadn't done a whole lot. He didn't have the resume at that point.
Fair.
But actually, no, I guess he had one extended already, so he was already on cardboard. He beat me with his own freaking card when the moon goes to the mountain. Busted piece of crap.
What a fair card, huh? What a fair card.
But
don't worry, I'll scold him for that on the show.
And so this is actually immediate setup. So in 2012, after the turn of the year, if I remember right, actually yeah. So I think it was 2012 Nationals in like January or February, over the winter, and then a little later in the year, they had Canadian Nationals up in Montreal, and that was actually a really wonderful place to visit. And I got to go back again this year for PTC, and that was wonderful. Montreal's a really cool city, and they have amazing food. Anyway. So in singles, I think I might have talked myself out of playing Slice Kicks or something. I feel like I had that a lot kind of this time of my career. It's like I remember at one of the Gen Cons, I literally didn't enter singles because I didn't want to get diversified so badly.
Wow. Wow.
And then Tim talked me into signing up late, and I played his funny Algol deck, Sight Unseen, and that's a really hard deck to play Sight Unseen, but in some ways it set me up for Asses at the end of the years down the line, so that was cool. But in Team Nationals, I again didn't want to play Slice Kicks, or maybe actually. So Garrett was still competing in singles, and so he couldn't play in teams. And I asked him, "Hey, could I borrow your Amy deck?" And this is something I feel like is like good advice, and I should try to do more often. Is if I lose to a deck, I should pilot that deck and see what it's like from playing the inside instead of just being mad that I lost to it.
For sure. You know how much I've played Tim Keefe recently? So much. Yeah,
it's a really good. I mean, it makes you learn about the game. It makes you understand better what's happening if you play from both sides. It's really powerful advice. But I played Amy. So I played the deck that I lost to. And my team, actually, Sean and I actually both rattled off 3 wins and went undefeated in this team national championship. And so I became the last team Canadian national champion. Put a little asterisk on that because there was another team tournament, but it didn't get a card. And so that was kind of
there was another team event, but it didn't get a card?
Yep.
Doesn't count. There's no physical
count.
proof.
Sorry, Tim. Tim is Tim on Team's cardboard yet? Tim Keefe?
I
think he isn't.
Don't believe so.
I'll look really bad if he is.
He didn't go and win UK Nats.
Oh, he just won this year. Yeah, he just won this year.
All right. Well, congratulate. Well, it doesn't count. There's no physical proof. Nothing's happened yet.
Oh, yet. 2v2 belts. So actually, yeah. So in 2013, they had a teams tournament that it was Jeremy Ray, Andrew Alexa, and Tim Keefe, a absolutely murderer's row of champions, and they actually won it, but it was considered too small of an event to award a card. The secret history of UFS right here, boys.
Thank goodness we're past that.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, that was kind of the journey to my first champ card. Was I kind of had been brewing my own decks. I found kind of lightning in a bottle and built a Slice Kicks deck. Didn't quite take it down, but it didn't take down Worlds certainly, but then started traveling, went to Nationals, got second place in a close finals, which you can actually watch on YouTube, the Garrett versus Kevin, Mike Lowe against Amy matchup.
Okay.
And I complain about it like a complete donkey, and I'm glad I can reflect on younger me and like think what an idiot. Because it's
thank goodness for YouTube.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, my past is recorded for posterity for everyone to laugh at. But then I kind of rolled that. Didn't top 8 in Canadian singles that year, but then you got to play in teams, got to take down that first team card.
That's awesome. What was the card that you won?
So I won Millennium Games and Hobbies, because back then we called our cards after the store we played in our local things, and we kind of like threw it out together. I wanted to hold, like, we were like, hey, it'd be funny, like we all like Soul Calibur, so like we'll have Soul Edge and Soul Calibur, and Sean wanted to be Mega Man. I don't know if that was prophetic or what. That
it must have been.
I mean, the Soul Calibur was easy because like we had Soul Calibur, like it was Soul Calibur was still like still playing with Soul Calibur cards. It was Soul Calibur 4 back then.
Oh,
yeah.
Dang. And so what I'm. We've got 1,000 cards. So you tell me. Do you want to talk about card design of this card? Do you want to talk about card design of later cards? I don't know,
Um,
because this rap sheet is forever, and we'll if we want to talk about how you designed every single card, I'm not sure that we'll
I,
have a 4 hour show, which I don't have an issue with. I don't know how sensitive your time
yes.
is.
um, I think I can talk about it a little bit. I think
Sure.
uh, we kind of my team like we all kind of talked together and kind of I think we sort of settled on the symbols first, if memory serves, and we kind of wanted to sort of have some kind of call out to all the symbols. I know Sean has always been really big on like having block. Like, he really wanted to. He's a very hateful person. Sean O'Brien is. He wants
What?
to design cards that ruin other people's days or whatever. And
Okay.
he was sick of stacker characters. So there were characters like Kazuya, and I think the Angels had come out at this point. And so he wanted to make a card that would destroy your opponent's stacker characters. And we went back and forth a whole lot on that response on this card. And I think the enhance was I kind of came up with the idea of the enhance and sort of pitched it. We like haggled over what the effects would be, but the broad idea was like we wanted to make it sort of like a control check cost, but a little bit
Yeah.
sideways.
Yeah. I dig it.
And then we again had our spiteful moment where we said, oh, and we should make our card there's all these other champ assets and actions and stuff floating on. We should make our card not work with them. We should like punish you for playing them. And so we put the 2 vitality rider on it, like where you just lose life for doing the ability. And I wish that wasn't there so much because this card would be way cooler. If you could play it with a much straighter face, and I like the diversity where you can play different kinds of card types now,
Yeah.
rather than just being boring with foundations and attacks. But I've had some good times with this card. I really like the ability of you don't know if you're getting a damage pump or a zone change, and they're both things where you want to do it to almost all of your attacks. Almost, because if you're forced to change your zone, you might make it a worse zone.
Yeah.
And then you can do it to your opponent's attacks, but there's like several layers of risk. Where like if you need to change the zone, you can clutch that out, but you might give their attack more damage instead.
Or it might just lose 2 life.
Yeah, just burn
because.
yourself. Yeah, idiot.
So is this where when did because when I think of Kevin Broberg, I think in the back of my head Kevin Broberg and Sean O'Brien. And when I think Sean O'Brien, I think Sean O'Brien and Kevin Broberg. Is this where the friendship started, or have you guys been local friends for a while?
Actually, it started a little earlier. So it started, I want to say, at the start of maybe 2011.
Okay.
So Sean, my brother and I had our collection, and we didn't like I had my cards, he had his cards, but we would lend each other cards if we needed stuff or whatever. We built our own decks for the most part. It was like we would trade with each other more so than we would lend with each other, and then we would just build decks that didn't over that much. And then when the game died, our cards were just kind of lying around. We didn't really die harded out and keep playing, even though there was no support or whatever. But then Sean got back into it. I forget if Sean was, I think Sean was one of the old guard, and he kind of heard it coming back and said, okay, I want to try to organize this and get the group back together. And then he had some. He kind of got the local OP scene going. I think he got some promos in the mail or whatever. And then at some point, I forget how exactly this idea came to be, but we said, hey, let's combine our collections. We can put them all together at your house, and we can build decks together, and we can share all the cards. And that's really where, after that idea had passed, after we'd gotten that done, then shortly after that was when the idea of Rockstar CCG was born, because when we combined our collections, we had a whole lot of, we had 8 copies of a bunch of chase cards that we both collected 4 copies of. And then it's like, well, hey, what can you do with this? Oh, we could sell them on eBay.
Yeah,
we can make money on this.
Yes,
we can turn these cards over and all that stuff. And that's really where Rockstar CCG got started, was just selling cards on buy it now on eBay. And from there, the rest is history. But,
the rest is history. RochesterCCG.com.
Yeah, and that's kind of where our friendship started, and then we became closer and closer friends to UFS, and it was, they basically said, hey Kevin, we want to go to Gen Con, you want to come with us? And I was like, I've never traveled before, but sure.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and then we teamed together for Gen Con, and my did okay. We top 8'd, and then we teamed together at I think we may have teamed different teams at nationals that year, but then teamed. I think we teamed together at nationals, then teamed together at Canada, and then got our first card all together.
I love it. That's really cool. Of like when I think of Rochester CCG, I almost exclusively think of Sean. He's the man in the orange suit.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 100%.
But you were right there with him. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I got on the ground floor. Like other people were like, yeah, we're gonna like sponsor some players. It was like I was the player who helped, or who like was in on the ground floor, and like I was not on the business side almost at all. I was just kind of here's some seed cards to get things off the ground, and then Sean just took it and run with it. And then I was like de facto sponsored because I've been
your cards.
Because I've just kind of inherited being part of Sean's collection since then.
Yeah.
Which is very blessed.
For sure. So moving on. We have a couple championships under our belt, but none of them count because they're all Canadian. What what brought you over to? We've got Legacy, we've got Extended in 2013, 2015. Tell me about that span of 3 years.
Yeah.
What does a young Kevin Broberg look like there?
I remember for the Canadian National Championship, I remember I'd been growing out a really gross beard and doing a terrible job of it, and now I'm growing out another gross beard, but I'm doing a little bit better job of it. I'm trimming it a little bit, and
you look great.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I was kind of doing the same thing. I feel like maybe some of the cards had rotated or something, or I forget why. I forget if Slice Kicks was still legal at that Canadian National Championship or what was up with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have
Slice Kicks like the key, right? It's like your favorite competitive card.
Yeah, it was really good, and it was a lot better than anything else I could come up with, and it checked a lot of boxes for me. It was very fun. It was very powerful. It let me win a lot. But I know for that event I played a Meilin deck that I think we must have rotated out. Like we must have not had all of the. No, we did have all those cards. I don't know what changed. They might have banned some stuff. Must have been that. But it was kind of that deck was actually just very much exploiting champ cards that they had printed. So they had printed the first batch of Jasco champ cards with cards like Cataclysmic Force and Lion Stance, and making a killing. And those were all just incredibly powerful cards. And I realized that they synergized very well with Meilin, and Meilin got to dig through a deck and kind of get a snowball effect going, and also got to I got to play a deck that was just like 4 completely busted attacks with Harnessing Chaos, Piercing Howl, Maximal Laser, and Spinning Demon. So yeah, Spinning Demon was from Tekken, so that's definitely wasn't like a big rotation or anything. But I took that one down, kind of just building that deck. I actually beat Garrett in the finals this time.
Let's go.
And then I wish I had like a whole timeline of all these events, but I think that these would have been on the old Jasco forums, and as far as I know, those are gone to history. I think that the Legacy Championship came earlier in that year at Gen Con that year. Garrett is like really tied in with all these stories, and because for the Legacy Championship, I actually borrowed my deck from Garrett, and then also beat Garrett in the finals.
Ooh, that's got to feel terrible and great, because he gets the John of like, well, it was my deck. Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so actually, I know on the last championship corner, Piglet mentioned that I named all my cards after song lyrics.
Yes.
And
yes.
I kind of got that idea from some old promos like "Trade Your Passion for Glory," and I thought that was just like a really cool idea and like a way to inject some culture into your game, so to speak. Which is like really like we're putting into like 70s hair metal into our game. Yeah, culture, but
culture.
Just a little bit. And so for the legacy card, the story there a little bit is Garrett lent me the deck, and then I think I lost my second or third round, or I might have like lost 2 rounds at that point. I think I lost my first round, and then if I lost one more, I'd be effectively eliminated. And they had a lunch break after round 3, and it's Gen Con, so like you could get a hot dog there, but you kind of had to walk a block or 2 away. There was a mall, and we were standing in line for Chick-fil-A, and I was kind of joking with someone like, "Oh man, I'll just like lose another one, and then we can like go draft or something." And then I forget like what the content was. But I remember that Garrett kind of gave me a pep talk, like, "Oh man, yeah, like fight it out, like you got this or whatever." And that's kind of the origin of him handing me a chicken sandwich in the like. It's his hand handing me a chicken sandwich. It's a real line for chicken sandwiches. At the mall. It comes to the price. Sorry,
it comes to the price.
Yeah, this is the Legacy Champion card was I think might have been my first individual championship. I think it came chronologically before I won it before the singles card or the Canadian National Championship.
This is good looking card art. Good job, Gunship Revolution. Look at you in the corner.
It was my art direction. It was like supposed to be a grainy old boxing film. And
I love it.
Down in the corner or whatever. And then like the color is coming back into my life with this delicious. Because I was also hungry at that point, and that chicken sandwich like really revitalized me.
So
on top of the pep talk.
For all the idiots out there who don't know, what song is this?
So this is like not a super like big club banger or anything. So this is from a Florence and the Machine song. I think it's called Rabbit Heart.
You don't even know.
Yeah. So there were. It's a couple layers here. So
okay.
So the lyric is, "This is a gift. It comes to the price. Who is the lamb and who is the knife?" Which I thought was like pretty appropriate for I handed this guy a deck and then he sliced my throat with it and beat me.
Yeah.
Like who is really like getting? I don't know.
Did you at least give Garrett 4 copies? Were you like, hey, thanks, man?
Probably. I don't know. It was weird is that I won these cards and then they didn't get printed for a time because I was not terribly proactive about like engaging with the design process.
Why is that?
Which certainly I don't know.
Was that a Kevin thing? Was that a Jasco thing?
I don't think you can like necessarily assign like I don't know if there's like blame to go around, but like I wasn't super proactive about it. I know they contacted me once or twice, and I kind of started a conversation, then it petered out, and then I didn't get back up, and I would kind of say like I would kind of like pitch an idea, and then they would say, okay, let me think about that, and then 3 months would pass, and hand it over. I don't know what's inside there.
The cards didn't get printed.
I think the art took a long time. I didn't like go out and hire an artist for a lot of these, and then at some point someone like really got the fire in them to like say, okay, let's get these cards printed. Like that's a clear out our backlog sort of.
Yeah.
And so I know. And also the other angle of the Florence and the Machine song was that I was also listening in earbud in my ear just to Florence and the Machine songs on repeat during that finals match. In part because it was at 3 a.m. after Garrett had played like a 4-hour marathon semifinal on the other side of the bracket.
What a machine!
Yeah.
You didn't think to take a nap?
No, we had to finish it. It was on, and I mean, like it wasn't all bad for him either because like he was like deep in legacy mode. I was just like during that time I was just off like preparing our team's decks. I was like helping my teammates out and like building standard decks.
That's cool. Moving on, 2015. Extended.
Right. Oh man, extended. So Garrett wasn't here for this one.
Thank goodness.
Except in spirit, because I played a Garrett 1 deck to win this one.
Yes.
And it's, we got the secret history of the UFS a little bit of champ cards that didn't have enough players for them. I guess they backed off on that policy a little bit, or didn't want extended to go out with a whimper, because this is actually an 8-man event at Origins this year. I think they had been hoping to get a lot more people to show up, and then they didn't. But only 8 people showed up for extended, and a few more people showed up for a PTC that weekend. But the name Bring Your Friends is kind of for me the story of the event was that I built 3 decks. Actually, like I'd been having a ton of fun brewing and designing decks with Ryan Field, and just kind of jamming with each other, finding new combinations of all these old cards. One of them was a Lilith deck playing Ivy support, and they were both kind of 3 damage themed characters, so there was a lot of really cool overlap there. One of them was a Joe Hill deck that was inspired by some actually just standard decks that had been winning, I think, a UK card recently and had some other success. And it's like, well, it's just, some of the stuff had rotated, some of the stuff had been banned in standard, or maybe not banned, but it would be banned in the future, like Blazing Storm got banned when they unrotated Red Horizon, but it rotated into extended at this point, and kind of put that together. And then I built this Garrett deck that was sort of a defense-oriented card advantage machine. So like Garrett's big ability is that he gets to build his cards, and whenever you play a card, he gets to build one committed, and he gets to just really kind of manipulate a lot of resources, and then sometimes put a lot of speed on his attacks. But mostly, he just gets to build a really big staging area ahead of schedule and potentially across symbols. And what ended up happening was that all 3 of my decks made top 4, made the elimination cut, and then I had to beat actually both of them. I got paired into Thomas Robb playing my Lilith deck, and then I got paired into Tim Keefe playing my Joe Hill deck. And so that's why Tim is on the art, getting riding my horse with me, or getting scooped up.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that was Tim.
Yeah, he's got if you look at the Tim Keefe 1 art and then look at that art, it's the same that was the art direction.
Scarf.
Yeah,
I dig it.
It was the artist's idea to have me holding a bomb. I remember that Ein Negafor actually had been provided the inspiration for this one. He found an art of Ryder from Fate Zero, and it's the same kind of thing. He's like riding a horse, like this conquering conqueror, I guess, like conquering whatever. And he's like literally carrying his I don't remember my fate lore, what the name of his like master or whatever is. I think he's the master, but he's a servant, and then the person who summoned the servant is the master.
Somebody let us know down in the comments down below.
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
There's a weeb somewhere who's like, actually.
Yeah, you guys know Ryder though. The Ryder's awesome. So that was the inspiration for this art, and then the lyric for this one. This is kind of like. I just like heard this, and like the fact that it was such a weird deep cut. This is actually from a Nirvana song.
Okay.
Load up on guns, bring your friends. It's fun to lose and to pretend. Which I don't know. That second part's kind of a downer. I don't know about that really. I like bring your friends, and I liked it's kind of like a weird juxtaposition of like this cool, like this exciting card art and this like happy lyric or whatever of bring your friends, and then it's from Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is kind of a.
It's fun to lose and pretend is like your little homage to Tim, right? It was
yeah.
Congrats, buddy.
Yeah. Like I got second place a lot. Garrett was getting second place. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, getting last place is fun as long as you have the right attitude.
For sure.
I have done that. I have gotten last place at enough events.
So now we get to jump into where I get to be part of the conversation now.
Yeah, it's very one-sided. So communicate.
No, it's totally fine. I'm learning so much. 2016 Teams World Champion is a format.
The good people have heard this story a little bit.
That I'll never forget.
Piglet, check out Piglet's interview.
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but like you can get some background to this one, get some good knowledge out of Piglet, and
but what
be sure to subscribe to the Patreon too.
Thank you. Ooh. I gotta say that extra talk changed my whole perspective on teams. 100%.
Piglet is a teams wizard. I really, he's fantastic. He's a great person too, but boy,
you know about the advice, right? Like, yeah. We do that anytime we go out to lunch. We take and we do that, and that's just what we do now. Is we run it. Anywho,
that's awesome.
$1 on Patreon. So, 2016 Teams World Championship, you come with a bunch of jank. And my question is how did you create the jank that made me, Tamron Dallas Cardwell, get involved with the game? Without this deck, we wouldn't be sitting here, Kevin. We wouldn't.
So it all started, I think it actually started with the Jiffany Jamber deck. We actually so Jiffany Jamber was kind of a funny, jokey meme character. In that there was very split attitudes, especially between the Jasco employees and some of the player base, about the merit of having an infinity symbol 8-hand size character in the game, who had no drawback, because there were some 8-hand sizers, but they had severe drawbacks.
Yeah.
And we decided to have an event we called the Jiffany Jamboree here in Rochester, because we like our fun formats, and Jiffany Jamboree is like it's a really good copy. It's a funny name for something. And just the rules were you had to play Jiffany Jamber, and it was honestly a really great fun event. Honestly, I would run it again, even though she's very not legal. You just get to play an 8-hand size character and find something to do with your cards. And somewhere downstream of that, I'd had the idea of, what if I built a deck that's just like full of all these all these assets, and then I could play Tommy Yos and kind of got the gears turning a little bit, and then I could play like Karame Dama and like all this Bishamon kit.
Yeah.
And then combine it with DeForester and like maybe really get some cards moving. And I built that, and I played it a little bit, and it was kind of a mess, but there was a glimmer of promise in there. And then at some point I realized I could play Athena instead, and I could get a face down and maybe jumpstart things a little bit without necessarily getting the entire everything into play first. Because if you're a Jiffany Jamber, you really need 2 assets and Tamios to start doing anything else.
For sure.
And then I played this in a Rockford PTC and had a middling result. I ended up losing a couple key matches, didn't top or anything, but had again showed some promise and showed some weakness. I lost to I think a couple 7-hand size characters who just kind of shut down my defense a little bit shut down my offense a little bit too much, and I couldn't quite assemble the right kind of defense against them. And then they unrotated Red Horizon. And it went from a deck where it had 2 key cards. It had DeForester and Tamios that really kind of broke the rules of the game, and that you kind of get a lot of kind of foundations and resources for really not a lot of effort, just as sort of a sidebar to what else you were doing. And it went from 2 cards to 3 cards when it added Superior Technique. And now it was like, I have these, with Athena's ability to cheat down a foundation, and then I have these 3 ways that at any point in my turn, if I draw these, I can cheat them into play, and I can start generating a snowball. I can start making more resources as I'm playing my turn, and I can start just really running away with things. And that was kind of those core 12 cards were clearly, here are the 12. You were saying, here are the cards that are definitely in my deck. And then everything else was sort of an offshoot of that, and kind of optimizing how I was going to spend those, spend all those foundations, and what can I do to keep drawing cards, keep them through my deck, and all that other good stuff.
Yeah.
And really, I only played a couple of games of Superior Technique, and it was like, okay, this is so busted. This needed to be banned. This is absolutely insane. Because when they unrotated stuff, they made some very conservative ban decisions. They made some choices like left for dead rather than left to die. Was an old Vespera card that just picked up a face down. It's like, well, they just said they don't want that in the format. So it's like, okay, guys, but Superior Technique?
Yeah. One of my favorite, for the new kids, when I was learning to play the game, Superior Technique was very much in the game. One of my favorite things that you could do with Superior Technique is your opponent play an ability on their character. You respond with Superior Technique, pick up Revoke, and then play Revoke. What?
Nope. Response windows, baby.
Yeah.
Hey, you just paid 4 difficulty for Revoke. That's completely fair.
Well, okay. We'll agree to disagree, but sure, yeah.
It feels good. You feel very smart.
It certainly does, yeah.
But yeah, so that was really the genesis of that deck. Just kind of recognizing that you could get all these cards moving, and then sort of I think of I remember I took there's some ideas in kind of an AI of if you imagine the world as a multi-dimensional sort of if you imagine a map, right, and it's you can have some tall hills and whatever.
Yeah.
And if you think of the height of everything as how good it is,
mm-hmm.
You kind of want to climb a hill, right? You want to go up to the top and find the highest point there.
For sure.
And as you're building decks, you can kind of move things around and just jiggle things and see, okay, how good is this now after I've changed some stuff? And so there's a lot of just sort of tweaking and sort of random let me try this out kind of stuff. I know after I played it in teams, I realized, oh boy, I was having trouble having enough fuel for my deforesters. So I should cut some foundations to put revokes in. And I didn't have a lot of revokes in teams, and that's I really should have that in singles. And singles deck was a lot better, even though it didn't quite have the same result.
That's okay. Yeah, you had your friends to back you up.
Yeah,
the hired guns. Once again,
hired guns, baby.
Once again, learn all about that card on Piglet's Champions Corner. But
yeah,
I do gotta say, you're the reason that I'm here. I watched Ben Shoemaker play against James Stevens in the Arkansas PTC, and they went to the honorable Game 4 when in Game 3 it top cuts. Somebody reversal to safe attack back when we were a little more strict on what was going on. And so Shane was just like, well, start over. You both got a double game loss. We got to find the winner.
Wow.
So that's the first time
really
I've ever been excited for Game 4 of yes, I get to see more of this monster of, it was such a cool deck. It did things that I'd never seen before. And I said it again, it was 100% the inspiration for Dr. Wily. 100%. I read Skull Fortress 2 and was like, oh shit, this is just a Forester, but with extra steps.
Tam, have you ever played a dual symbol deck where you played DeForester and Skull Fortress 2?
No, no.
It's a rush.
It sounds it.
Yeah, and honestly, like in retrospect, I know there was a lot of talk after my performance at Worlds where I went actually undefeated in singles. Actually, not like undefeated. I went 8-0 in singles and Swiss champed.
Wow.
And I won teams, and then I won my first round of top elimination, and then I was eliminated in top 8. And
so what beat you?
Dimitri. Like Dimitri, it's a kind of a throw deck with a lot of board control and spinning necro driver and reversals and stuff. Or not reversals, revokes and kind of anti-draw stuff.
Flipping to Forester seems pretty good.
What's really interesting is that I actually was 5-1 against Dimitri's on the weekend, including people matched me up in teams several times, and I think I beat one in Swiss in singles. But it's kind of like, even if you're really good, even if you're like, I don't know if I don't want to say I'm like a lot better in the field, but like even if I had the best deck in the room, like one person winning a whole lot of games in a row is just unlikely. Like like you're never 100% to win a match. And so if you keep like flipping, like if you flip 3 coins in a row, and if they're anything but 3 tails, you win. Like you're probably not going to win a 11-round tournament. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like you're not going to hit that 11 times in a row.
Yeah,
all the time. Maybe even at that point you might be a small favorite still. I don't know, but
at this point, Kevin, we could easily put your name in the running of the GOAT. Okay, so I appreciate you being humble.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it's very important for me not to believe that, because then I'll just be like, yeah, I'm just the GOAT. I don't need to try anymore.
Oh, totally.
Very much. But actually, I was starting to think about I was starting to say people wanted this deck banned, and I'm glad that Jesco didn't ban it, because I think both it's very cool, and it's very I think it's very like seeing what other stuff you can do in the game and seeing what else is possible in the game. That can be very inspiring, and that can be very exciting, and like it's really cool. And I think the deck wasn't actually imbalanced. It was just very, very good. And it was also extremely skill testing. So I know there were a couple events where other people played it and didn't 8-0 their tournaments, right? And I know later this year, in 2016, and I know this because I looked at the Player of the Year spreadsheet from this year, I won an Atlanta PTC that was actually like 60 players or so, and it was absolutely stacked with talent. And I remember I actually played against Asks Athena in the top 8 of this tournament, platted by Church, and I remember distinctly, like he played some assets, and then he went like Tamayos into Karamedama. So for the kids at home who haven't played this deck a million times, Tamayos says if you have 2 assets, you get 2 Fakes on Foundations off the top of your deck, and then it removes itself as cost. And then Karamedama says if your opponent blocks this, you draw cards equal to the number of assets you have. And so I just remember like he went first, or he got this off. He had a good draw. I'm just sitting there like, man, I love these cards. This is awesome. I'm getting wrecked right now. This is great. I love it.
And there's the Johns. Church, I made that. I lost to my deck.
I think I actually pulled that one out. Actually, that game 1 where like he had that good stuff, but he like I found the right line to defend against it, because like my deck, like of course I know it really well. Yeah. I know all the weaknesses, but yeah, I mean also it's a crazy complicated deck, and you get to like if it like one thing I try to think about is like if something unlucky happens, you think about like, well, how unlucky did you have to be? And I think at some point he like drew 6 cards and none of them were attacks, and then he made 2 control checks and they were both attacks, kind of thing. Like that was very lucky for me to pull that up, like for that kind of thing to happen. But
so moving on, we've talked about my favorite deck of all of UFS for long enough. This is on your list. You've got 2016 Player of the Year run, where you've got Teams World Champion, and then Atlanta PTC with Kix Felicia, and then the Reno PTC Champion with Ryu. This was you won Player of the Year 2016.
Yes,
with just these
it was actually
3 events
down to the wire. Uh, there were 10 events total.
Okay,
Apparently that I attended. I remember right. It might have been 12 actually. Do I have the spreadsheet still up?
we can check.
Oh, I do. Nice. Okay, yeah. So I went to 12 events, and there were a whole bunch of Swiss champs in here as well. And kind of the big thing for Player of the Year was, and I think still is to borrow a phrase from a Magic program a few years ago. It was that playing is good, winning is better.
Yeah.
So you got a point for every match you played, and then a point for every match you won, and then a few extra points, then a significant bonus number of points if you won the entire event, and also a few points for Swiss champ. But like a second place finish wasn't worth that much more than like just showing up. It wasn't even, it was like less than twice as much for getting second place versus like a 2-3 record kind of thing. And this player of the year was actually down to the wire, and both Miles was in second place with ultimately behind by about 17, behind by a pretty good margin because I won the last event of the year. And it turned out that if I had missed top cuts, I think I was still. I think I guess I think I was. If I had lost my last round, that's right. I actually played against Ryan Pham the last round in the Rio Mirror. This is before Ryan Pham was the Jasco employee. I think actually maybe his last event on the outside. But if he had won that, he would have diversified me. And then if Miles had gotten to top 8, he could have run it out and beat me for Player of the Year.
Okay, that's a very close race.
Yeah, it was very close. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I think that was about all I had to say about Player of the Year, basically. But yeah, I had a really long list of awards. Went to 12 events this year. Miles went to 15 and had also won a PDC, Swiss champed a few times. Had a lot of really great finishes. So it was a really sick run down to the end.
Is Player of the Year the reason that you kicked it in gear for 2016 to go to all these events, or was that just like happenstance of like, oh, I am close enough. Why not just go for it?
Well, I think it was a confluence of. Like I became Player of the Year because I was traveling so much and because I had a lot of fun and I was winning a bunch. Mm-hmm. And then in 2017 I continued to have a lot of fun and continued winning a bunch and continued traveling a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Kind of going to almost like most PTCs during the course of the year. And yeah, in both these years I was kind of playing a lot of I kind of played a lot of different decks. So like you said, of the events I won, I played Athena in teams, and then played Felicia with kicks, and played Ryu. There was an all deck that kind of abused end cells more than anything else, and also abused the very, very powerful Ryu character card.
Yes.
And then in 2017, I did a heady mix of building my own decks and then piloting sort of like net decks / decks that I like decks that were inspired by decks I took off the internet. Like I played Dr. Wily in a Florida PTC. That deck is what a blast, dude.
It does everything you want to do. Yeah.
But it was really kind of the game first that made me travel so much. Was that it was so fun. There was so much stuff to do, and all the games were so engaging and fun.
So let's move on to 2017 then, because it's
Sure.
also got a hell of a rap sheet. Las Vegas PTC champion, Atlanta PTC champion, that was the Dive Wheel CA. What a blast!
Yep. So that was actually the premiere of the kind of the deck of the. I think you could probably fairly say like the deck of 2017 was what Rob called Arnold Palmer Zoe. It was 50-50 attacks and foundations.
Yes, that's funny. But tell me about 2017. Give me. Are there any like neat, interesting stories from that run? Like you went to 1 million events. I'm sure there's got to be something that sticks out.
So certainly, actually, I would say the story of 2017 started in 2016. So in Reno, we got our first. Did we get our first previews, or did we get our first? I think we got the full set spoiler maybe of Blood Omen.
Yeah.
And I remember I was with Brett Hillman, and we were walking into the hotel lobby in Reno, and we looked at the card Fort Negley Restored.
Yes.
And if you know your history, you know where this is going.
Yes.
We realized that the combination of Fort Negley and 2016 World Team Champion deck Psyche, proven competitive character, allowed you to add enhanced speed on and whenever the hell you wanted it, whenever you had an enhanced step, to put 2 cards in both players' card pools. And it was like, wow, that's really good. That's clearly very good. We just gotta figure out exactly the right kind of shell to build this around. And kind of with that in mind, so the first VTC of the next year, in I want to say January, like late January, February, I flew down to Vegas after coming back from been in Reno, and then the next event was the first event of the calendar year 2017 was in Vegas. And I basically looked at it as a kind of a goofball meme deck with a lot of very mean, very powerful cards, but it was kind of like, haha, let's see if this works. I remember I played a match before the tournament, and I was like, well, however this goes, I'm doing this funny thing. I'm gonna have a good time. We're not here to like, I don't know, like prove anything. We're just here to see how the cards fall. Yeah. And then a couple rounds later, it was like, wow, this is a really cruel deck. It does brutal things to people. I get to play Nevos, and that card deals 1 million damage.
What a card!
Yeah, what a card. And that was really kind of for me the deck of this year. Or no, shit. That can't be the deck. It's always the deck of the year. But for me, it was the deck of the year. This deck actually won. It did not win. Would not win nationals. And I don't think it won. Well, it clearly didn't. Wait, where's Worlds this year? Yeah, it didn't win.
Won UK national champion. Pillar Fort Psyche.
Did no one? Oh, I played it in singles in Worlds, I think, and I did not win. Yeah. Ugh. This is the beginning. I think this is the first time where this is the first big tilt monster Kevin Broberg in Top Cuts this year in Worlds. But it won UK. It won UK teams, and it won this Vegas PTC. It was kind of, and it won national teams as well. And it was really, I feel like kind of, the thought crossed my mind of like it was the first deck I ever built that was like really like defined the metagame, but I guess I kind of built a lot of those over the years. For sure. But it was really on a lot of people's minds. It was a very, very powerful deck that could do some really crushing, brutal things. But also at the same time, it was kind of fair in its own way because it started with 19 life. Every time you played Psyche form, you lost 2 more life, and so it was a very it was a brutal deck on both sides of the table, where you could take some really, really painful losses as well.
For sure. So What else do you have to say about 2017 before we get into the bebop meta? Before we get into the fall, as you put it.
I think so, yeah. Definitely. So I think I played a lot of really different decks here. I remember. I played in Vegas, kind of just like let me play the Psyche deck and have some fun. And then I remember thinking, well, I'm going to Atlanta for the next event, and in Atlanta they play a lot of really, really potent, well-tuned aggro decks. And I don't know if Psyche's the right place to be to only have 17 vitality effectively in a lot of these games. Let me play something different. Let me play this like Tengu Dive, Scorch Wheel, million bad checks, like super like powerful card draw aggro beatdown deck. Sure. And I built the C deck that ended up taking down the whole event after losing round 1 in a mirror match, a Turboman like pseudo mirror, Scorch Wheel mirror match. And then I kind of went even further down the insane beatdown spectrum in teams that year, and I got to meet John Fong, one of the Canadian players who I've talked to a few times on Discord since then. But who was one of the people on Garrett's crew in Alberta. And finally came down to Vegas for Worlds that year for the first time, and I got paired him for round 1 in teams, and I literally turn 1 killed him on the play. I hit him. He was playing Satoshi, and he ate a critical split.
I mean,
welcome to the game. Yeah. Welcome to America. And that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. And then I got to win my. Probably highlight of the year was. Up there with all the different decks I got to build and got to play and got to compete with, I got to win Player of the Year, and I got to win my second champ card. And this one turned out a lot better than the first one. The first one kind of was in limbo for a long time, and the art's great. The art was a really really funny, really cool. I liked a lot, but the abilities were pretty bad. This one came out a lot better. I think the art's even better, and I'm happy with the abilities. I got to shout out to Ask Athena a little bit. I got to shout out to C also with the form is kind of like C crossed with Tamayo, so it's like a little bit Athena, but more of the C kind of. And then they gave me a cool defensive ability to go on top of that, which is kind of what I asked. I kind of this one instead of kind of like engineer it down to the precise millimeter, I kind of just said, okay, I talked a lot. Like Sean was my design team for this one in a lot of ways. We brainstormed a lot of abilities, and then eventually, I think it was literally at some point in like the Mojave Desert, we were driving around doing like Sean loves road trips, and so we actually for Worlds that year, I think we flew into Colorado, or for Worlds one of these years recently, we flew into a different city and then drove to Nevada, or drove to Las Vegas.
Interesting.
And got to see some cool national parks and stuff. Do some hiking, and somewhere out in the desert, like that just like sprang fully formed into our minds.
That's cool.
And then it's like, what if we crossed C with Tamayos? And it's like, that's perfect. And then I said, hey, Jasco, here's what I want. Give me something else. Like, finish this design. I want to be a 7-hand size with defensive ability together with this. And that's what they gave me, and that's really cool.
I dig it. If you want to see some examples of Kevin Broberg, too, check him out on the channel. I think we've made 2 decks, I think that's right.
And if you do check them out, and I have one piece of advice, is put more copies of Shishio in.
Yeah. She's just pretty good.
Especially if you want to win the matchup against Xianghua. It's very, very important.
So, 2018, Reno PTC champion and the Rochester PTC champion. One with, and this is the start of, where did Bebop happen? Bebop happened.
So Bebop happened at the start of, it might have happened actually in the winter. It happened in the winter, I'm pretty sure. The start of, the end of 2017, start of 2018.
Yeah,
I forget the date. But I know the first Bebop event was the Poughkeepsie and Guelph that year, and I remember Tim. Actually, there were 3 Spike 2s in the event, and all 3 of them were playing for top 8, but the Swiss champ was already locked in as Tim Keefe.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of amazing. One of them played it out and actually knocked Phil Birch out of contention, and the other one just scooped me. And this is kind of before I had developed the integrity of the results meme.
Yeah.
But like this is like this happenstance of like I think it was Phil Birch got played, like had to play his match and lost. Like Phil Birch got screwed and I got in because of the generosity of one of my peers instead of them deciding to play it out.
Yeah. You would have beat him anyways.
That was the first event with Bebop. No, I wouldn't have. I actually Dr. Wiley, and I don't know if you know about this, but if your opponent knows what's up and they're playing Spike 2, they will discard all of your attacks, and you will never get momentum, and you will never win.
Yes, very much so. for sure. But this is where the meta changed, and it feels like Kevin didn't change with it. But recently, you've gotten to this place where like you're consistently. Yeah, you said on the year roundup on Top Deck Heroes, which you can find out on Twitch. I don't know the URL. Twitch.tv/
roster_CCG.
There you go. That UFS is incredibly fun and the most you've ever the most fun you've ever played, and you gave it like a 10 out of 10. So what happened? What changed from Bebop dropped? And I remember you sitting across as Vicious sitting next to me when I played CA dressed up, and you were genuinely not having a fun time. Like, what has changed from Bebop till now?
Was I not having a fun time? I remember I liked that deck. I liked that deck that I had. I think it was not the right deck to be playing, especially
you were sitting down. And, you were sitting down across from Andrew Alexa playing as Vega, and
I love that match. I mean, I got bodied, but
you were like,
that match was sick. I was dejected because I think I gave away. I think I made I made at least one critical mistake in that match.
Okay.
And like also just can't like. I remember in game 2, I destroyed him with the Fury of 1,000 Suns. Like,
okay.
I dunked. He got dunked on. I was playing I was playing a deck that I thought was a lot of fun and had a lot of potential and was cool. It was around this interaction between a card from Indians, which you may know as Sensei.
Okay.
It says after you play a symbol specific ability, you discard a card from your card pool, and then I played it with Mayfa's Assault. And so
that's really
that
cool.
basically says play the enhanced. Mavis Assault plus Sensei says enhanced, add a card from your card pool back to your hand.
That's really that's a neat move.
Yeah, so this is like Kevin Broberg and Cowboy Bebop. Like I'm playing Vicious, and I'm playing a cool interaction that involves moving your cards around, and then it's like a sidebar. It also can deal a lot of damage. You can like manipulate your opponent's staging area. The successful Vicious deck of the weekend was Miles Tyler's deck that was playing Missile Launcher.
Yeah,
and I did not believe in Missile Launcher. I did not understand Missile Launcher, and it's kind of the same way that I did not believe in or understand Spike 2 until he kicked my ass. And even then, I kind of didn't really get it. I just thought he was like a really good. I pretty much thought Spike 2 was a really good deck, and he was like unfairly good at beating people down. And the truth was, but he wasn't unfairly good at it. It's just that he was as good at it as the rest of Cowboy Bebop, which was better than everyone else.
Correct. Yeah.
And I was still attached to my mindset, my approach to the game that I'd had for, however long. The same kind of mindset. Like, here's Psyche, here's whatever, here's C, here's Ulrich, and those decks just weren't at the same power level. They just weren't as good as the Cowboy Bebop decks.
For sure.
And you kind of just had to have the open-mindedness to understand that and to play enough games to recognize what's going on and recognize the new kind of watermark for like the sea level, I guess I should say, of how good stuff can be and how good you should expect your stuff to be. And I was I mean, Vicious that deck was good, but it had a lot of not holes so much as sort of things where it needed like to draw the right cards at the right times.
Mm-hmm. And nobody gave you the time to do so.
Well, it was like your opening hand had to have the right. You got to have the right opening matchup. Okay. And it certainly could have draws. I mean, I remember I played a 3-game set with was it Barrett? I think it was Barrett Bryant, who was playing a Big Shots Jet deck. Yeah. And it went to 3 games. Like it was reasonably competitive. And then Miracle of Miracles didn't get disqualified for reporting it as a draw, but they tried the next round, and I lost to Garrett. And then I realized that I was in the draw bracket, and we had the wrong number of points, and they said, okay, well, we're going to fix that, and we're not going to disqualify you. Don't fuck up again. I think I was virtually limited after that loss to Garrett. Yeah. But I got put in the draw bracket after losing. But it was a competitive match. And I know in teams that year, I basically net decked, plus or minus net decked Scott Sudman's Spike deck. And I played that, and I actually beat Scott in the mirror with the Spike 1 mirror of just Vengeance of the Fallen Angel nonsense. Mm-hmm. I did just fine in teams that year. I beat a Woodman padded by Cody Cannon, if memory serves. And that's like kind of a soft counter matchup because I have a hard time pushing through his stuff. He has a lot of damage cancellation, reduction, and a lot of incremental advantage stuff, and I managed to squeak that one out nonetheless. And I was still operating at a different level, and I didn't want to accept kind of the narrowness of the metagame. I don't want to accept that you basically played. You figured out how to build a Cowboy Bebop character, and then that's what you played, and that's the best strategy was. Yeah. With a narrow field of other people to, your Woodmen, your Vegas, who could still sort of compete in that territory. And then as it widened up as we got more sets that were on the same level, there were a lot more options after that. Okay,
but now the game's open. We've gotten 1,000 sets since then. So what do you found success with Zhanghua? That's like that's
yep.
So go into that. Go into the process of like how did you discover the straight sword sister?
Well, I discovered it when everyone was memeing about Krita Yuga as it got spoiled, as like how busted this card is, and like, oh my god, Zhanghua doesn't take control checks to player attacks, and oh my god, it's so broken and whatever. And then I said, and then I felt like as the spoiler season came to a close and release neared, everyone stopped talking about her. No one was like showing off decks with her or really talking about her anymore. And I said, well, I'm looking at I don't remember what else was even on the table, but let me see if I can track down like how to build the Zhanghua deck. See where the cards lead me, I guess. And I sat down and I started building decks in UFS Ultra, and I built an 80 card deck that was total nonsense. And I said, well, that's not it. Kind of and just like thought about what's it like if Krita Yuga is the best card and Zhanghua is the best character, like what's it look like to build a deck that really maximizes these two cards. And one of the things I realized pretty early on was that you want to have a high attack count. And if you have a high attack count, that means you have to have a low foundation count. And kind of, I remember one of the thoughts I had was I want to build a deck that's going to have the nut draws the most often. It's going to have as many nut draws as possible, and it's going to do something that's really good like a disproportionate amount of the time. In exchange, I'm not going to have a lot of foundations, and that's just the direction everything's pushing me in. So that's where I'm going to go.
Okay.
And I remember I had talked with Dave Wagner a little bit because we had built some for some reason was kind of adjacent to something in my head of help me tune the spam counts. And I remember he suggested that I play the combination of Left to Die with Quest for the Hero Sword, which basically is a foundation that says flip, get a 3 damage attack from your discard pile to your hand, and then with Left to Die you can, if they don't block your attack, which is something Jank kind of pushes everyone to do, you get to pick up a face down.
Yeah.
So if the game goes long, I'll have time to assemble my 2-card combination. And then I get to just grind them out at my own speed, and I can just hold the shields up and make little incremental step-by-step progress as we're both playing the shields up maximum.
Yeah.
And that was a big idea, and that helped me grind out a tough quarterfinals match against a strong player, William Howard, playing Jada, who's a really good defensive character who could on a surface is a really good character to exploit someone who doesn't have any foundations in their deck because he's just got kind of a staging area.
But Moonset's a very good card. That's for sure.
Yes. And I think kind of big picture, I think what was happening for a lot of these events in this span between 2017 and today was that I was still showing up to events, I was still building decks, I was still sort of finding things that were cool and interesting and exciting, but they weren't the best deck in a lot of the rooms. So I remember I went to UK Nationals and I built a Vega deck, and I'd had this idea from before even Cowboy Bebop, actually, that I just called Suicide Vega. I'm just going to be Vega, and I'm going to start attacking on turn 1 and 2. I'm going to cut my life total down from 19 to 9. I'll be in desperation. I'll have -1 to all my checks, -1 to all my difficulties, and I'll just beat you to death super, super lightning fast.
Okay.
And especially when Mortal Kombat came, actually it might have been Bebop because of Teddy Bomber. Said lose 3 vitality as an enhance and start carrying up their stage gear and get a damage bonus. With Mortal Kombat, now we had the Scorpion starter and we had Sun God Choke, and I realized this is the moment, this is the time for this deck, to really make this work. And then I showed up to UK Nationals, and I fought a lot of close matches. I had a lot of really cool games. I played a Vega mirror match, which was incredibly weird.
It's a weird matchup, that's for sure. When do I commit my character? When do I bait them into committing their character? It's something. Something to play.
And I know Keith McGee is our local Scorpion player. He plays nothing else. He's a huge Scorpion fan. He plays UFS because it has Scorpion.
Yeah.
And he calls his deck 27 wrong answers, which is, how much life do you want to have right now? There is one correct answer. There's one answer that is the most correct. There are 27 other answers that are wrong. And Vega was very much that kind of situation. Do I want to attack here to help him get into desperation to then backswing me? But so I built this deck. It was cool. It was great. And then I get to top cuts. It's in the last round, or somewhere in this tournament, I lose a match to Liu Kang. I play a close match against a Water Liu Kang. But then in top 4, I get paired into Fire Liu Kang. And frankly, it's a situation where his deck is just born better. He has higher consistency. He has more powerful cards. He has a better nut draw. He has a better worst case scenario. I'm clawing and digging in the dirt and doing everything I can, and it just comes up better and he wins. And then in the finals, it's the same thing, except his deck is getting eaten alive by Mike Hardman's Life Quan Chi.
Yeah.
And it's Vega was a good deck. He wasn't the best deck in the room. That was Quan Chi. Quan Chi got banned, then after another event, Liu Kang got banned, and then I was off Vega at that point. But Coffee Time is still a card. Actually, no, I wasn't off Vega. I played it at Nationals, and I had a great time there. But then I did the now patented Kevin Broberg. Actually, no, that time I just missed on Diversity at Nationals that year. But with Zhonghua, I feel like I had the best deck in the room again. And so I won a tournament, and then I had a heartbreaking situation at Worlds that year. Where I actually Swiss stamped again, but then I had a decklist registration error and had to play best of 1 matches from then on out to win, and I immediately lost. But I had a sick match in top 8.
All right, so we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it.
Oh yeah, I forgot, dude. I literally forgot about this meme until I
So
hit me.
how, Kevin? How does this keep happening, man? Like,
Listen, it doesn't.
you're the goat. You're the greatest in the game, but you can't write a deck list. You can't have your buddy look at it.
I can. I don't need to. Except this one time.
Except
So let me tell you, at World Championships in Las Vegas 2017,
for sure,
where I Swiss champ teams, I go 7-0 before losing the last round to Rodney, get second place after Swiss. Do you know when I turned in my deck list for that event? Do you know when I finished writing you want to finish changing cards on my deck list for that event?
I don't know. You tell me.
3 minutes before the deadline. I was changing cards in my main deck and my sideboard 3 minutes before the deadline, and I handed it in with absolute confidence that it was correct, and it was. So at the start of my career, I didn't have a very good approach to deck building, to deck list registration.
Okay.
I made a bunch of errors. I know there was one memorable time where I debated with the judge team for about 25-30 minutes to ask them to award me a game loss, but not make me change my deck that I'd been playing all day. Because I'd written down the same card twice on my list.
Okay.
And my big innovation, the big thing that I kind of realized is that if I sort my deck, it'll be the same however I try to organize it. If every card has one place that it's in, it becomes very easy to spot mistakes, and it becomes very easy to organize, and everything's in the right place, and you can't get it wrong.
So for the new kids out there, how do you sort your deck?
So I organize it first by card type, and then among each card I sort them by quantity. So all the 4X's go together, then the 3X's, and the 2's and the 1's. And then I sort those alphabetically.
Okay.
So it's a 3-layer sort, and it lines up very nicely with the deck list. You write down all your 4s and all your 3s, you're choosing your 1s. It even kind of helps you sort of organize the deck. Well, it's hierarchically, right? So it helps you, like all your 4s are the most important cards in those slots. Your most important attacks, your most important foundations.
For sure.
Stuff. And if you sort it like that, it's really, really easy to spot a mistake, because if you have a 3-up card and it's not in your 3-up spot, or if you're supposed to have a 3-up card and it's in your 4-up stack, then obviously it's wrong.
Yeah.
And yes, this happened at Worlds. Yes, this has happened at other Worlds. This happened probably at a PDC or something. But it was like 3 years running without a deck list error, and now the meme is back.
And now it's back. All right, so to end, before we get into our Patreon questions, to end on a really high note, you have been described as one of the most fun, creative. We've sat here and we've talked about some of the most interesting decks that have been made in the game. Some very memorable, not solely because of their power level, but because of, man, that's a really neat idea. My question is for anybody who's looking to push their deck building to the next level, how do you find that good line between fun and competitive? Like, I can throw a bunch of really fun, terrible cards together and go and have a bad time. But conversely, I could take and throw the 60 best cards in the game, go to an event, be as you said, the best deck in the room, and go have a bad time. How do you find that line of what's fun and competitive?
I feel like I can't answer that question, because I'm just itching to deconstruct all. So
say that one more time.
I'm just itching to deconstruct the premises. So I think if you can build a deck and have, I don't know how, for me personally, I think if you hand me a deck and I go into a room and I'm having a bad time playing it, that the fault lies within my mindset, or and if you can take responsibility for your mindset and your own experience of the tournament, then that gives you a lot more power over, or that gives you, I mean, you have the power to control your emotions to an extent, right? You have power, you have the power to determine how you react to something. So if you go into a room and have a bad time, there can be exterior forces that act on you that make it very difficult to have a good time. But there's a lot you can do to control that too. And so, I have a good time if I'm playing UFS. I think I have a good time playing UFS even when I'm losing, right? And I try to have a good time. I try to find like the joy in just like playing the game, and I think that's
For
something
sure.
I focus on a lot. And at the same time, like as far as finding a line between fun and competitive, you can't necessarily find that on your own. You kind of need people's help to show you what every deck can do, and to experience what the game, what's possible within the game.
Mhm.
And kind of my process to find the decks that end up being fun, both fun and competitive, is to focus on just like the smallest units of the game to find like what's a combination of cards that does something cool that excites me that I like, and then kind of try to find out how to iterate that, try to find the right combination of things to put around it. And you know, I think I mentioned earlier of like sort of finding like not building the decks but finding the decks. Not like taking, oh, like I'm gonna put Krita Yuga in a deck. I'm gonna like, oh, I'm gonna like, not like I'm gonna sit down and like start my deck with 17 cards and say, well, okay, yeah, here's my perfect deck. I know what the best cards are already. It's like, well, I start with Krita Yuga and then I say, well, okay, what complements Krita Yuga? And then once I have like, you know, a rib cage for my skeleton, it's like, okay, what's the best femur I can attach to this thing? And you know, it's sometimes you can like, there's decks that are really like these complicated puzzles where every piece ends up interlocking with each other, and those are really rewarding decks to find and build. And a lot of times that's like to find the fun to find room for the fun interactions, you have to go off and find the really deep cuts that manage to fit in, like be the perfect puzzle piece to tie the room together.
So this actually ties in perfect to like our first Patreon question by
Okay.
the Ryan Fam. If you want to ask any questions to our future champion corners, go out to patreon.com/TCG University, join the Discord, and in one of the channels I've just got champion corner questions. And he says,
Nice.
obviously, oh, I locked my phone. Hold up. Obviously, ask him about his approach to deck building, how to help other people enable their galaxy brain ideas. I remember sitting down and talking with him when after almost every event, I message Ryan Fam, and one of the first things I do is I go, Ryan, what was the coolest deck there? And normally he's like, there wasn't one. They were all garbage. But there was.
He's right. There's a lot of uninspired decks out there to have regard, but let me tell you.
One of the first times that I asked him this, he was like, Kevin Broberg, Jank deck, and the way that the foundations interact with each other, everything had a place. Everything was like a 4-card combo. And as soon as he got it all there, it was like I only wanted to watch Kevin's matches the whole day. It was hard to do my job because I just wanted to watch this Jank deck just seamlessly roll together like clockwork, like gears in a clock. And so his question is how do you go about scrolling through UFS Ultra for the 80th time and finally getting something to snap? Is that the key? Is it having a big play group? How do you, as he says, unlock that galaxy brain for how to read and interpret cards? It's a big question, I know. It's a big, big question. The second one's just as big. Don't worry.
Well, the thing I'm struggling with, so, I mean, I can tell you how I built that deck, right? It's a 60-card deck, and I had a couple really good ideas. I get to play a lot of very powerful cards, and what makes the foundation base such clockwork is that I just relentlessly murdered all of my darlings. I started with 100, like I remember specifically, I mentioned talking to Dave Wagner about the spam slots, and like that, I think it's like a 1 of left to die actually ends up playing a very key role in some matchups. I had like a 40-card. I made a UFS Ultra deck of just all the spams I thought about playing. There were 40 cards on it.
Wow.
And then the sideboard also contained some like 2-diffs and stuff that like, oh, this interacts with that. Like, you know, there was some Quest for Hero Swords in the sideboard. Like, yeah, left to die. That's a 2-card combo. That's really good. And it was. I can't tell you how I couldn't teach. I don't know how I could like give a soundbite that would explain how to go from that 40-card list and condense it down into the like 13 or whatever spams I actually played in that deck. Get good. I hate to even like say that sarcastically, you know. I think you. I struggle to make a blanket statement that's less general than just you gotta be able to follow the leads of how cards work together, of how the game works.
Okay, so it's true comprehension of, hey, what does this card do? And looking at it and being like, what strings attach from where to where? And maybe if you're truly going for this big galaxy brain, have more than one string or have enough strings that are like 1-to-1 that is just like tight enough. Like I know, what's the Lilith Foundation that commit a foundation for plus
Freeing
two
the
damage?
freeing the relics. Yeah.
Freeing the relics and manifestation is like the easiest thing to look at. Plus damage, they commit a foundation, and then with Krita Yuga, you ready that foundation back, and it's another like these are the strings that we're looking at. But this doesn't all start from just Krita, or it actually starts from manifestation with just static text. So like it's it's possible that the 3 damage package might just be a perfect storm for this. Stumble upon cutting your cards. You said killing your baby, I think was, or of like I can make this tight deck, but maybe it is something along the lines of just put every card into a UFS Ultra list and see how they work together. Look at one card and then look at every other card and be like, do these cards work? If not, get rid of it. Because I'm sure you didn't spend 10 minutes on that deck.
I spent a little more than 10 minutes on that deck, yeah. It's definitely UFS, because there's so much going on, you can think of it in a lot of different ways. You can think of it as a very multi-dimensional game where you're looking at like how much damage our attacks dealing, how many foundations does the player have in their staging, how many cards does the player have in their hand, how many, everything that can be going on. And Freeing the Relics is a really good example. And I think there were a lot of cards in this deck that ended up being like this, where they serve more than one purpose. Okay. So, the most important thing Freeing the Relics does for that deck is adds 2 damage to your attack.
Yeah.
Because Zhanghua really needs to be able to put real numbers on the board to be able to finish games, to be able to set up everything else, to make everything else work, to make your opponent be forced to block and everything else like that. Mm-hmm. And then, so Freeing the Relics checks that box, most importantly, but it also has a good low block. Then it also has a speed reduce ability, which is really critical, especially in some of your bad matchups like Cassie Cage and Akuma. Now you can just pass that one key block, and it's playable while committed. And then it also has that manifestation combo. And so, kind of in the vein of finding things, once you see manifestation and Freeing the Relics next to each other, it's light goes off. That's a combo. Those cards work together. And if I want to put those together, now I need 4 manifestations in my deck and a couple copies of Freeing the Relics at least, so that they'll come together. And then you kind of just have to figure out if you can find room to keep that in your deck, and if that's fitting with everything else. Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways that deck was a lot of Perfect Storm stuff. A lot of cards that just fit into a really nice jigsaw puzzle piece.
I mean, but this could also go back to not just the 3 damage kit, because we've also got Psyche, which we saw Fort Negley, and then all the other pieces started to fall into place. And then we also got to see Forester Athena, which all the pieces started that deck, the pieces had to fall into place, or you're playing a bunch of bad cards for a normal UFS deck.
Yeah, and I think I guess the I remember having a thought, and then I was oh yeah, that's how I was gonna finish that thought, and I forgot what the thought was. Like you mentioned, bad cards. Yeah. Cards are only bad in the context of. Actually, one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is the idea of a base rate of how good a normal 2-diff is, and then and you could also think of that as kind of the opportunity cost. If you put a card with no block in your deck, and then you get stuck with it in your hand, now you're sort of paying an opportunity cost compared to having a card that did have a block in your hand. And that's one way to think of just comparing cards that you could play or could not play. And also opportunity cost is a good way to think about the eternal question of how many cards do you put in your deck. Every card you add over 60 is effectively lowering the number of copies of the cards that you have 4 of. Yeah. It's lowering the number of copies of every other card in your deck. It lowers your 1-ofs too and stuff. And so you're paying an opportunity cost of cards you could have drawn instead, which may not actually make sense, and is kind of a very abstract concept to explain to someone who doesn't already know it. But if you are familiar with opportunity costs from other games or whatever, that's a good way to think of those things.
I would love for Kevin Broberg to teach us more about these kinds of things. I would love to get learned personally. Yeah, personally.
And I guess to kind of do that a little bit, you mentioned you should start all your decks with 200 card UFS Ultra deck. I don't know about that. I think it can be very valuable though to chunk it up and say, what's the role I'm trying to fill? What are my spam foundations going to look like? But actually more than that is to understand what you want your deck to do before you start building it, because then you'll get some strong bones on your skeleton. And Zhonghua is a great example. I knew I was playing 4 Karita Yuga. I was absolutely certain of it. I was very quickly absolutely certain I would play 4 Swallow Your Soul, although maybe that's not even the best idea, as we saw with Jacob Johnson's UK deck. But I was sure, for the first weekend I wanted to play that. I was quickly sure that I wanted to play 4 Windmill Punches. I was sure that I want to play 4 Forbidden Moon sets. Some of this week 1 stuff, eventually, some of those numbers I'm changing as you gain more experience. But for week 1, I was sure about that. And then I said, well, okay, and I'm sure I want to play like 30 foundations and 30 non-foundations. So what am I going to do with these cards? Like, how am I going to fit all the stuff I need my foundations to be doing in this 30 cards space? And so then I started looking at foundations that filled more than one role. And that's one place where I went for that. And as I was finding the interactions, I was sure I wanted to play Free in the Relic Manifestation because it seemed very powerful.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the areas where I think, I guess, having an eye for card evaluation and having an eye for how good interactions are and how good cards are is very critical to building decks. If you don't want to just say, I'm going to build every possible deck under the sun and see how it goes, which is kind of where you have to end up if you're going to build 200 cards, I think. And if you build if you build decks in chunks and say, well, how does this work together with that? How does that work together with that? And one thing I'm actually a big fan of is just starting my decks over. And I say, well, I feel like this is kind of a dead end if I keep trying to just tune and tweak this. I don't think I'll be able to make room in a Zhonghua deck. I don't think I'll be able to make room for a Ice Bag and Seiryu if I want to try to incorporate that. So let me just start all the way over and re-examine all my work that I'd done previously. Yeah. And I'll just start from scratch, and I'll still understand how the deck used to work, and I'll use that to inform my choices. But as I'm moving forward, I'll try to look at it with new eyes.
I love it. That was the soundbite that I needed. Thank you.
There we go.
That was good. That was super good. So I've got one last question from one of TCG's own, Travis TNT Tangeman. And you commented on this just the tiniest bit. Good foreshadowing. Ask him how he himself would abolish diversity and whether he believes it's good for the game. Diversity. You said at one point that you were so afraid to enter singles because of diversity. Is diversity a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your hot take? Now, remember, you just had a very uplifting, positive message at the very end of that last topic. So, if we're gonna dive into the salt mines, let's go ankle deep. Let's not swan dive. Fair?
Hey, so how would I abolish diversity? People whose opinions I respect have a very high opinion of diversity.
Ooh, give me a list of names right now. Who do you respect? Who you don't respect?
Well, Jeremy Wade thinks very highly of diversity.
Okay, there you go. That's the name I was totally thinking.
yeah. I think he's been one of the most outspoken proponents of the system. He's a big fan of it. He thinks it's very integral to the identity of the game. I think it's fair to say that it is fairly. It's an important part of UFS. It's an important part of the tournament history. It's an important part of the identity of the game in a lot of ways. I don't think diversity is healthy. I think that it causes a lot of it very directly causes problems, and it creates perverse incentives throughout the system. One thing that I think is essential to a card game is the ability to build a community, and I think that one of the insidious harms that diversity inflicts on the game is that it makes it much harder to relate to your other players. It's much harder to pick up a deck, to borrow a deck from someone, or to borrow the idea for a deck from someone.
Yeah.
And then just see the world through their eyes. And it's almost impossible to play the same deck as someone in a tournament, to actually tie your fates together and say, yeah, I trust what you have found, and I'm going to play the same exact deck as you are.
Yeah.
Because I trust in what you did. You are forced to be an island unto yourself and to find your own way. And there's a very real like attitude of like, oh man, he stole my deck. Like if someone shows up into a tournament, like a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, well, like I'm not going to play this deck because I know Kevin Broberg's going to play it. I know Ben Shoemaker's going to play it, so I'm just not going to touch that character.
Yeah.
And I think that's literally the polar opposite of what you want in your game. You want like kind of the big names to be leaders, to say like, yeah, here's this cool thing I found. Everyone should be able to try this. And I think I'm not going to try to speculate on the motivations of people of what they want to see in the game or how they think they should best accomplish that. But the result of diversity is that you can't have that. You can't have you can't have me say, here's X Athena, show it to the world. Let's all go play in a tournament together. And I think that that's very harmful. And I think that one of the worst things about it is that because it's such a core feature of the game, and because it's one of the first things that everyone hears about, if you say, oh, I want to pick this game up, like, what deck can I play and go to a tournament? It's like, well, here's a deck list, but
the big asterisk.
Those people just leave. They never come back.
Yeah.
They're immediately locked out because they're immediately priced out of the game because they don't learn it and then get locked out because they didn't win enough. Because even like, you know, competitive players can, like, if you're a genius Magic player, you can pick up UFS to a competency fairly quickly. But even if you're good enough to win all but 2 of your matches, which in a lot, like, go X1-1 is a pretty good record, now you're going to be knocked out because you weren't the best Akuma or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. As somebody, I mean, in the Vegas PTC, I was playing Spike versus Scott Sundman's Spike, and our difference was
situations
a tie.
like that are completely. Like I can't believe, like, there are a few things that are kind of tournament administration things that are absolutely just shocking, and we've had more than one. First place Swiss is a given deck with a given record. Second place Swiss is the same deck with the same record. I was on the right side of this once at Worlds, playing K-Dash, and Shane Duckworth was in second place. We played our match, we tied, and his strength of schedule didn't hold up. It's insane to me that is still the rule 5 years later.
Yeah.
And ankle deep in the salt mines. Let's leave it at that. But that rule is very obviously has very clear surface problems, and I think it has very deep. It has very deep problems, you know, under beneath. Besides those,
it feels very grassroots. Actually, it reminds me a lot of I'm a martial artist. I'm a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo and a 2nd degree black belt in Hapkido, and it reminds me a lot of a patented phrase we used to say back when I was training more regularly, called Dungeon Do, where, hey, there's the top level where you got all your color belts and, hey, everybody's having fun and we're playing games, and then you've got underneath the dungeon, underneath the dojo, the Dungeon Do, where, hey, we're gonna sit in a horse stance for an hour and a half, and my sensei is gonna leave. Have fun. Just go do this. This is only for the hardcore of hardcore. Of, you get that mentality of, I want to be the best, and you said the people that will turn and run are the people who are not here to necessarily be the best. They are totally fine with just going, top the event, it's fine. But unless you've got that true winning drive, it's not. Diversity is just not a thing that you can necessarily have. Like when Miles Tyler got me into the game, it was truly this game is, you pick a character and you go and you be the best that you could be. My name's Terry Bogard, and I'm the best Terry Bogard. Your name is I was gonna say X, but like that's been shortened to Jacques. Your name is X, Y, or Z, and you're the best at that, and that's like how you make your name. But that does mean, with only 170 standard characters, means that at most we can only have 170 people play the game, right?
Yeah, and you know, actually, you mentioned earlier that on the Year in Review show, I had an extremely glowing opinion of GWFS. Diversity is less and less important. I think that at a time, you know, the origins of the rule was in the very first few sets of the game, there were a club of like 3 characters, and everyone else was wildly unplayable next to them. And it was like, you have Cassandra 1 dot or 2 dot. One of the first Cassandras had 7 hand size and stopped your opponent from playing foundations. She just had free counterspell for every foundation they played.
Gross.
She was S tier, and then there was an A tier, and then there was the F tier, and that was the gap.
Wow. Okay.
And diversity was invented then to say, well, let's make our top cuts look a little bit more appealing, right?
Yeah.
There have been several tournaments throughout the years where you have the S tier, and that character wins the tournament. That character was the favorite going into the tournament, and there are several people playing that character in making deep runs undefeated in that tournament, and it's the one of them that makes top cuts that ultimately ends up winning it. Yeah. And there's an element of like it's not quite that predetermined. Like I mentioned, if you flip 3 coins in a row, eventually they'll come up all tails sometimes.
For sure.
But they're the favorite. They're the most likely to win, and that's what the community believes, and that's historically that's the actual fact of what happens. That's the kind of situation diversity is here to protect us from. We don't have that situation anymore. We have dozens of decks, not dozens of characters, dozens of discrete ways to play the game. Maybe ways to play. You don't have dozens of ways to play the game, but you have several options that are completely discrete from one another. Some of them are structured on characters. Some of them are structured on the cards around the characters. And I guess if we want to talk about shortcomings of diversity, we've had times where you can sandbag. You can play the same character. You can play 4 different characters in front of the same deck. They're all about as good as each other, and they can all top cut next to each other, despite the diversity rule.
Yeah.
Because it's a narrow rule that only solves for one thing.
For sure.
If we don't want to kill diversity outright, you mentioned to completely seize control of this conversation.
No, you're good.
You mentioned that the question was, how would you fix it?
Yeah.
I think there is about, I want to say off the top, I feel like, I don't know if I can rattle off all 4 of them, but we've had several conversations about diversity in the Discord and other places, dating back to the Jasco Games forums of how to fix diversity, how to make small improvements if we don't want to kill the rule outright.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we still have top 16 with single diversity, where the 16th discrete character gets in, which leads to some really abysmal results, like the Scoop Nationals, where I remember Keenan made a really wonderful Facebook post about how many scoops were in your Sunday, and people were saying, I made top 16 with 3 concessions on my way in, because there were all these Liu Kangs who couldn't get in anymore. There were all these Jackies who just didn't have anything to play for. There were all these characters who were virtually eliminated before the end of the day, and they just stopped playing. And gave away their wins because they couldn't drop because the prizes are conditioned on.
Too good.
The prizes are conditioned on showing up for every round.
Yeah.
And so you can't just say I'm done with this tournament because I'm eliminated. You have to just sit there and take up a seat and give away your win because you're not playing for anything. But anyway, so off the topic, one of the fixes is to institute a rule where there are 2 seats for each character. One of the rules is to change the diversity structure such that if you are past a certain point in the elimination in the standings, diversity does not apply. It only applies to the bottom half of the bracket, or to players who are at a record below a given threshold, which variably could be just to solve specifically the XO and 1 unintentional draw in the last round in the mirror situation. You could say if you're XO and 1, you're in no matter what. Or you could say if you're 5 and 1, if X and 1 or better, you're in, or whatever like that. There was double diversity. There's that diversity.
There's a whole thread on the Discord, right?
Yeah. There's a whole channel in the Discord that has been very active. There have been threads in general throughout the years. All kinds of things. There's a lot of ideas on how to tweak diversity to improve it, and it strikes me as a very archaic rule that doesn't have clear goals and doesn't clearly accomplish those goals as well as it ought to or as it should, and it has drawbacks that aren't acknowledged.
The good news,
kind of fun I'll say on it. Yeah,
Universes is a brand new game. 2020 is coming. And I'm certain that Jasco is going to do their absolute best to make everybody in the community as happy and as welcome as possible.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Ending on the positive note.
Universes, My Hero Academia.
How did you enjoy the interview today? Did you have fun?
Yeah. Dude, I could prattle about UFS all day. I could have filled this whole interview just talking about Van August.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the interview. As tradition, my question is, since I am not familiar with everybody who is in these, who is a past champion, who should I have on? Give me somebody that I can look up, that the good people at home can look up, to try and find some pedigree. We've had Piglet, we've had Keenan, we've now had you. Who should be next?
I already had a name on my tongue that I already met. You should have Jeremy Ray on to defend diversity, to talk about team strategy, and he is a storied champion.
Jeremy Ray. I'll send him a message today. Perfect, man. All right. Kevin, thank you so much. Any last minute shout outs you want to do before we close this guy out?
I'm terrible at these. I'm always freeze up. Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Well, from all of us here at TCGU and I guess Rochester CCG.
Yeah, shout out to Sean O'Brien.
Yeah, the man.
The myth, the legend.
Everybody, stay alert. Kevin, that was so good, dude. We're done. Wow.